everybody. Welcome into the Nesson Studios. I am Michaela Vernava. You are watching the Spoken Bee. And Brad Marchand returned to action for the Bruins after serving out his 5-game suspension for elbowing Devils' Marcus Johansson in the head. Now, Marshy contributed with an assist in the Bruins' 6-1 blowout at Madison Square Garden, but didn't exactly get out to a fast start.
Felt better after the first. Took a little bit of time to get back into it. They were flying too, so a little tougher, but felt good as the game went on.
Did you feel any rust to it, considering how long you've been out?
Yeah, a little bit, especially on a couple breakaways and missed opportunities. But a couple of times I lost pucks that I normally wouldn't lose, but it'll come back in time.
Yeah, it's great to have him. I mean, we did well without him, but he's a key player for us. We welcome him back. Thought he did some good things tonight. Could tell he had a bit of rust in his game. We haven't practiced a lot, like a lot of teams this time of the year. Schedule gets tough, but he was good for us. And like I said, we're happy to have him.
Now, the Bruins did just fine for themselves without Marchand in the lineup. They went 4-1 in the 5 games that he missed, but still there's no arguing his value to the Bees. He leads the league in points per game and goals created per game. But as for that pesky reputation...
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I've tried for a while now to kind of get away from that role, and I just can't seem to escape it. I think obviously, if you look back in the last few years, I've turned into a decent player, and it's tough to be branded with that name consistently. Obviously, it's for my own doing, but it's tough to escape it a bit. Devil's advocate there. It's what I had to do to get in the league. So I'll never say that I wouldn't go back and play the same way again coming to the league. And it's what I had to do to earn a job and to get where I am today. But yeah, it's definitely tougher. It's something you want to, when you're done, you want to look back on and say that you're remembered as a decent player. And I've had a decent run with the Cup and World Championship, World Cup, and World Junior. So I mean, there's some accolades there too that you don't want to be remembered for, but it's kind of overshadowed right now.
Joined now by our hockey analyst, Mike Cole. And Mike, Marshy's saying he wants to change his reputation, but I mean, this is his 6th suspension. He definitely has earned that reputation over time. Do you think he actually can change?
It's going to be tough. And it's with Marchand, it's always been the same. And he talked about this. Cassidy obviously talked about it. It all comes down to finding a balance for him. He's a guy who has to play on the edge to be effective. He has to play on the edge to, feel involved. He has to play on the edge to kind of have the right mindset. And obviously that's something that's worked for him throughout his career as he continues to get better. He's obviously in the middle of a career year, but I think that makes it just as important or even more important for him to finally get his act together. Because this is, outside of Patrice Bergeron, the most valuable player on this team, and you could maybe even make the argument that he is, although, going 4-1 without him kind of would argue otherwise. But it's something that he needs to figure out. I'm not necessarily sure he can, because it's just something that it's almost second nature to him. He's gotten better, but he can't have these kind of momentary lapses, because he's a guy who's going to be targeted by the league, by the Department of Player Safety as a repeat offender. So everything he does is going to be magnified. I think he has to kind of realize that, and it's going to be a work in progress. I think this is something that he needs to work on, just in terms of trying to find out where that line is, so he can get up to it and still play the way he needs to play to be effective, but not jeopardize his team in the long run. As we get down the stretch here, it becomes even more important. And then obviously into the playoffs, you can't lose him for an extended period of time.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is it's kind of like a double-edged sword at this point between, of course, getting suspended, but then even just unnecessary penalties. He's hurting his team. But I'm curious if he is actually able to change his style of play. Will that affect his productivity in a negative way?
Yeah, that's obviously the most difficult thing that they need to figure out, because you can't risk, as bad as it is losing Marchand for an extended period of time, whether it's 2 minutes or 5 games, you can't it's also tough to risk losing him being the player he is now. Is obviously far more than a point per game player. He's playing at a 100-point pace right now. He's not going to get there because of the suspension, but it's tough, because like you said, you don't want to risk that in the long run. For me, I almost come down to maybe just let him do whatever he's going to do, and if he's the guy who ends up costing you the season, that's kind of what you deal with. You dance with the one who brought you, or whatever the saying goes. If that's what it's going to be, if that's what he needs to do to feel effective, then you kind of go with it. But again, it's a difficult thing because you don't want him changing the way he plays other than the negatives. And it's almost like you kind of take the negatives with the positives. The positives obviously far outweigh the negatives, but he's just got to be a little bit smarter.
Yeah, well, maybe once a pest, always a pest. We'll see. Thanks, Mike. Another guy the Bees are happy to have back in the lineup, D-man Charlie McAvoy. Here's a look at his production in his 3 games back after missing some time with health issues. And here's McAvoy's defensive partner, Zdeno Chara. He has been getting after it on the gram since creating an account a month ago. And this 40-year-old, he's sounding a little bit like Tom Brady here. He says, quote, "The mind and the body are highly correlated. Any vital athletic performance is contributed to the right mindset under great pressure and responsibility." And Chara hit a huge milestone Saturday when the Bees took on the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played in his 1400th NHL game. And get this, the other 7 Bruins D-men on the roster that night combined for 1,477 career games.
Obviously, it's a nice milestone, but I'm happy that I can play that many games. But at the same time, I have to approach it just like any other game. Just get ready, focus, and play hard, work hard. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate every moment, and it goes by fast. But it's very humbling, and I'm very grateful that I can play for this long and the game I love and I enjoy so much. So I'm gonna work hard and continue to play as long as I can, and obviously my plan is to play for a long time. So just excited, and yeah, just another game.
All right, New Englanders, I know you're probably still sulking over the Patriots' loss to the Eagles in Super Bowl 52, but that's okay because the Boston Bruins probably are too. You know the Boston teams are always out supporting each other. Check out some of this. The Bruins support for the Pats ahead of Super Bowl 52. A goat on the Zamboni wearing a Brady jersey. Looks really weird and kind of creepy, but I love it. Gotta love the support. And my producer, Mark, he's a huge Patriots fan. Apparently couldn't get enough of this goat because we got a lot of footage of him just cruising around on the ice there. Majestic, really. And here we go. Nola Chari, love that dog. And he says, not done, out in front of some really cool Super Bowl 52 ice sculpture. So he was obviously rooting for the Pats. And then, love this. Patrice Bergeron wearing a Brandon Cooks jersey and his son wearing a Tom Brady jersey. All right, so Mike, I know that when it comes to football, you are a Packers fan, so you're not too distraught this week. But for the rest of New Englanders out there who are looking for a light at the end of the tunnel and don't want to wait until training camp gets underway and football season, what should Boston sports fans be excited about in watching this Bruins team?
First of all, my condolences to a fan base that's lost a 3rd Super Bowl in 10 years. I mean, just getting there should be enough for you, whatever. But that's besides the point.
Yeah.
No,
so sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Looking ahead to the Bruins, looking ahead to the rest of the season, in a lot of ways, this team is, I don't want to make this comparison necessarily, but a lot of ways it's resembled the Patriots where, you've got that veteran leadership at the top, whether it's Chara and Bergeron. I mean, Chara, you talked about him excelling at such a high level at the age that he's at and kind of keeping himself in shape. He's kind of taking a page out of Brady's playbook. You have that veteran leadership, but you also have young guys who are kind of filtering in, guys taking the next step. I think we saw that with the Patriots this year. I think we're seeing that even more with the Bruins. I think the fact that if you're a Patriots fan who hasn't really been paying attention to this team over the last 2, 3, 4 months, the most exciting thing coming back is how young, how exciting, how up-tempo this team is. It's almost a different style of play. I mean, it is a different style of play than we've been accustomed to seeing in the Claude Julien era. There's a lot more of an emphasis on the youth, and that's something that I think is, it's a little bit more exciting. It's new, it's fresh, but at the same time, they have that veteran leadership. And I mean, to be able to watch a guy like Patrice Bergeron on a nightly basis, that kind of speaks for itself. This guy's playing at an MVP level. For my money, he is the MVP through however many games it's been this season. You talked about earlier getting Marchand back. He's playing the best he's ever played. So there's a nice mix of veteran leadership, veteran guys that you're used to seeing, but also kind of getting acquainted with these younger guys who are, a lot of them, having great seasons so far.
And how about Tuukka Rask? I mean, can he keep up the rate that he's playing at?
I think he can, because they're playing so well in front of him, for starters, and that makes his life a lot easier. They've also done a very good job of kind of limiting his workload, and we saw Wednesday night in New York how well Anton Khudobin played. I mean, you win the game 6-1. It wasn't a huge test for him, but he was fantastic in the first period. I think he made 10 of his 21 saves in the first period. It was a 3-save combo that was as well as I've ever seen Anton Khudobin play. The question's about Rask, but I think a lot of that, a lot of what Tuukka can do down the stretch relies on what you get out of Khudobin. And if he's playing well, it's going to give them a chance to keep Rask fresh, give him some nights off here and there. And if this team continues to play the way that it's played, you start locking up a playoff spot. You can give him rest down the stretch. I think he's going to be as fresh as he's been in a long time entering the playoffs. I mean, granted, they missed the playoffs a couple of years there, but like I said, they haven't had to ride him to the ground as they have in the years past. So I think he's going to be even better down the stretch than we've seen in years past.
So they do certainly seem well positioned to make a good playoff run this spring. And it's crazy to think about at the beginning of the season, this was not the same discussion, but now it's even almost looking ahead to if they were able to make it to a Stanley Cup final, would they be able to compete with the cream of the crop out west? Because the competition's a little stiffer out there with the Predators, the Jets, even the Golden Knights surprising everyone in their debut season. It's
going to be tough. And, you talk about getting the final. It's going to be tough to even get through the East, I think, because you look at what they've done over, they're 24-4-4 since Thanksgiving. That's incredible. But, 3 of those 4 losses have come, or 3 of those 8 losses have come against Metro teams, whether it's Washington and Pittsburgh were the 2 big ones. And, those are teams you might end up playing in the playoffs as well. I think getting that, they're in line to get the 1 seed. I mean, they're neck and neck with Tampa. I think that's huge for them. That'll make life a little bit easier. But getting the Western, or getting through the East, if they, let's say they do that, get to the Cup final, I don't know. It's going to be tough to kind of know for sure, because they've struggled against the West this year. It's I was looking at it earlier. I talked about those 8 losses. 4 of those have come against Western Conference teams. So as well as they've played in the last 3 months since Thanksgiving, they've still struggled with the West. The West is better. That remains that's the same as it's been for the last few years. This team hasn't been necessarily, or hasn't passed the test against the best teams in the NHL. I think you kind of have to see that down the stretch. They've kind of built this huge surge on a lot of Atlantic Division teams. There's a lot left to be determined whether they can kind of stack up against the West. But if they get that far, I mean, if we're sitting here in June talking about them in the Stanley Cup final, the year's going to be success no matter what. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I think it would be a real difficult challenge for this team. A little ahead of ourselves, but the reason in bringing it up so soon is that it is certainly a worthwhile bandwagon to jump on now and give this New England fan base. While there's still space, you get on there. Get a good seat. Get on now. You're gonna be on there a while, so get a good seat. All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks. Now let's check in with Casey McDonald to see what's going on out there on the old internet. She has your Social Drive presented by Nissan.
It's your Nissan Social Drive brought to you by your local Nissan dealers. On Monday, Texans star wideout DeAndre Hopkins tweeted Malcolm Butler, "What up? We got a place for you in Houston." This, of course, after Butler didn't play a single defensive snap in the Super Bowl. Now he's doubling down. Hopkins photoshopped Butler into a Houston uniform and posted it to his Instagram. He's got competition, though. San Francisco wide receiver Pierre Garçon jumping in on the recruitment train, tweeting, "Come to the Bay. We've got cap space, a quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, and the best receivers in the division." Then the Suge Knight dissing Snoop Dogg reference, quote, "You won't have to worry about the head coach being all up in the videos, all in the way and stuff." The cornerback Butler is set to be a free agent next month. That's your Social Drive.
Social Drive is presented by Nissan. Innovation that excites.
The Nissan Rogue has everything I need to take on today.
Intelligent all-wheel drive when I need to follow the story or create my own path. Style, smarts, and storage. In the Nissan Rogue, I'm not just along for the ride, I'm driving. Shop the Rogue at your local Nissan store and choose Nissan.com. Innovation that excites.
That'll do it for this episode of The Spoken Bee. Thanks for tuning in. The Bruins welcome the Buffalo Sabres to TD Garden on Saturday night. Puck drops at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Coverage starts on NESN at 6 p.m., so make sure to tune in. We'll see you next time.